Hello, I thought I'd make a brief video, kind of a review or critique of the Istabreeze i1500Z wind turbine. This particular model is the 24 volt, 1.5 kilowatt model, and as with most wind turbines, they never ever seem to meet their advertised output. There's really no standard that they're judged by, and Istabreeze, when I purchased this off eBay a couple of years ago, they were not very responsive in providing specs, and buyer beware. So I'm just going to go over a few things, and hopefully it will help some of you make a decision in the future, or maybe service your Istabreeze if you need to. So as far as I know, the 48 volt version of this turbine would be assembled in exactly the same way. The only difference, hopefully, would be the stator winding. So let's go over a few things. And just a brief history on this turbine. So it was put up in February of 2015 and was up working until about April of 2017, at which time it stopped producing power. And I just managed to get it down off the tower a couple of weeks ago and take it apart to kind of perform an autopsy and find out why it wasn't putting out any power. So a few things I'll mention here. The blades actually are 42 inches long. They seem to be like a carbon fiber composite. They're actually fairly decent quality, and the little plastic nose cone there. They seemed pretty well balanced right out of the box, and I didn't have any excessive vibration issues just assembling it as is. Nice stainless hardware, all metric of course, so if you are taking it apart or assembling it, you will need a metric set of hex wrenches and metric box wrenches. What I found when I took this turbine down is that it was, I'm going to say full of water, but probably really only about a third full of water. A lot of it leaked out as it was heading down, so I really don't know exactly how full it was. The only thing I can tell you is that if you look inside the mount here, the body, you'll see the indications of where the water was sitting. And the same thing with this rear bearing retainer here. It's all aluminum, seems to be fairly decent quality casting. The problem in the end here ended up being that, as you can see, this goes together. So I apologize for the video, I'm trying to hold it one-handed here. This goes together like this, and then the stator body here just fits in this groove here, and it all tightens together. There's a little bit of a step here, and that's where the stator body fits into. Same sort of thing on the front of the stator body. This groove here fits into this groove here. But as you can see, this is just how I took it apart. There's no silicone on there, no O-rings, nothing that would prevent water from getting inside it, which in itself wouldn't be such a big deal. The only problem is that this slip ring, and I know for something that's supposed to supply about 40 amps at its peak, these are some pretty tiny wires. I think they're only about 18 gauge. I suspect it's grossly undersized, but the slip ring here fits down inside the mounting stub, like so. And it's driven home in there and seats quite tightly, and it's essentially waterproof. And as you can see, it's potted on the top, potted on the bottom. There's no way, once water starts entering the main body here, that it can leak out. So what happened is, over time, water filled up to about this level here and sat and sat and sat, never got out, and it to show you here, it just corroded off. Like, this is potted, I can't take it apart and show you, but the slip ring was actually seized when I pulled it out, and the wires just pull out like that. They're all corroded off the contacts inside the slip ring. So that's why it stopped producing power. Now, so that's a design flaw, and if you have an Istabreeze now, you can take a look here. You can see it goes down in, oh, probably a couple of inches. You could probably drill a small hole right about here to drain water, but still it would fill up to that level before the water drained out. I don't really know what the answer is, and you may not want to take it apart once I show you a bit of an adventure in taking this thing apart. So the other thing I will mention that's a bit of a defect, if you want to call it, in design is the tail. The tail surface, although it looks pretty, it's a nice piece of plastic. It'll never rust or anything on you, and it has been through some Canadian winters, so it doesn't appear to be too affected by the cold. It's too small. The turbine quite often will turn itself out of the wind because of the surface area of the tail is not sufficient to counteract the thrust of the blades turning, and it will turn itself out of the wind just about the time it's producing some mediocre power and earning its keep. It will turn itself out of the wind, slow down, then turn back in and repeat this cycle over and over and over again. At least that is my experience. And I have it up 60 feet in a relatively clear spot. I'm sure there is some ground turbulence being only 60 feet high, but that would be in average about 27 kilometer an hour wind here. So some other critiques that I have: the stator winding looks pretty decent. These three wires I had to cut off, but they were just so the way it sits in the turbine is that it sits like this, and then your wires come through this hole and are then attached by little like automotive type crimps in here, which I don't think really perform an adequate electrical contact. It'd be better if they were soldered, of course. So if I rebuild this turbine, if I decide to, I will solder them. But the stator looks fairly well made. But one complaint that I would have, and this maybe is due to the water being in it and freezing, is, and I don't know if you can see it here, but there are some places where the laminations are quite separated in the iron core here. Let me see if I can find one. It may be on the other side. I think you can sort of see some at the other end there. Let me flip this around quickly. There you can see the laminations have separated there. So I can't say if that was a manufacturing defect or if that happened after the fact, but the rotor wasn't scraping or anything like that in there. The bearings were still good. And you can see they're not exactly straight, but so the next thing I'll get to, and this is my main beef, is the rotor. So this was covered in neodymium magnets, and I can show them to you in a minute. And they really were not held on very well at all. I was able to pull them off effortlessly, and they were all shifted all over the place. So there's two on each pole, and there are 12 poles on this rotor. As you can see, there's evidence of water being inside there, some more on the front. The bearings, again, seem to be okay, although they are just made in China bearings. But the biggest problem I had was that I took this apart and I attempted to get the mount off the rotor, the blade mount. And it's on a tapered shaft with a keyway, as you can see here. And normally when you have a keyway and a tapered shaft, you just unthread the nut a little bit, give it a couple wraps, and it should break free and come off. Well, that was not the case. And what happened, and you can see this, is that I put my puller on there, and when I put my puller on and put some tension on it, it started to bend this, and of course it's only 3/16 plate, so I guess that should have been expected. But it actually bent the shaft. And the nut was threaded on it. I got a little bit more aggressive afterwards, but the nut was threaded on it, and when I pressed on the nut, it actually bent the shaft. And you can see this is a fairly substantial shaft. So maybe by design, I don't know, but it's incredibly soft steel that they used here. And as you can see, the threads are pretty well gone now after giving it a few raps with the hammer after heating the back part here with a torch. You can see evidence of that there. Still, I was not able to get it to let go. So I thought before I completely cut it apart with a saw, I was going to cut the shaft off because I think I'll make a new rotor for it anyway. I wanted to show everybody what you're dealing with here. So if you think that you're pulling the blades off of this thing, chances are you are not. If you've got a new one, I'd recommend, I'll get you a sympathy card first of all. I'm sorry about your luck, but the other thing is I don't believe I put anti-seize compound on here, and that probably would have helped somewhat. But like I said, this has only been up for a little over 2 years, so I wouldn't have expected to be seized on there quite as much as it is right now. Anyway, I think that is all I have to say at this time. Just not incredibly pleased with it. It did look to be fairly good quality build on the outside, but as you can see by this video, there are several design flaws, and pulling it apart, maybe putting some silicone on it, number one, putting some kind of a drain hole in it as an option as well. But unfortunately, this part here is the lowest part, and that's where the water is going to settle. As you can see, it sits like this, and that's the lowest part. So I guess you could drill a hole right at the very bottom here, perhaps would help. But if you had one up and it's been up for any amount of time and you live in a climate that's got regular rain, you're probably going to have the same problem sooner rather than later. So I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, please send them along. I'll try to answer them. I'm by no means an expert. I just thought I'd make a video of some observations. Hopefully this saves you a bit of time and aggravation. And if I do rebuild this and get it back up and flying, and it actually produces some sort of power, I'll provide an update. That's it for now.